What is up, guys? Ft.Dzeeff here, filling in on Team Samurai's channel. Sam asked me to come on his channel and talk about Subterrors. He said he wasn't really familiar with the strategy, and I've been playing the strategy since day one, and if you guys know, in Savage Strike, we just got Subterra Guru, which is an amazing card. Maybe not on the level of Spiral Double Helix, but still a very good level 4 monster for this deck. Now, this version of the strategy is not the Guru Control deck, as it's been dubbed, and the reason being is that the Guru Control deck isn't really like the old school Subterras that I liked a lot. And if you want to see a Guru Control deck, I will be posting that on my channel, which hopefully Sam will link in the description later on this week. But for now, I want to focus on a more pure version of Subterras. I featured this on my channel a few days ago, and people seem to really like it. And what makes this version a little bit more pure than the Guru Control deck is that the Guru Control deck has just tons of hand traps and trap cards and things like that, whereas this one plays all the old school Subterra Behemoth monsters that are really cool and really give this deck a lot more flavor. It's a lot more not so straightforward as the Guru Control deck, where you're just summoning Guru every single turn, not really playing any other cards. But this deck actually plays those big Behemoth monsters that make Subterra so interesting. Also, this version is like literally hundreds of dollars cheaper than the Guru Control version, because that one's using cards like Impermanence and Ash Blossom and Pot of Indulgence. This one's going to skip all those cards. So in other words, this version is best for players that maybe you bought Subterras when they were first coming out and they've just been kind of sitting in your binder. If you don't want to buy a ton of cards adding hundreds of dollars to just play Subterras, this is a version for you. You basically can just build this with all of your old Subterra cards as well as Guru as the only new card. Anyway though, let's jump right in with the rest of the deck profile. So first off, we have 3 copies of Subterra Guru. So this is the new card, and it's like the main card in Subterras now. Maybe Fiendus used to be that, but for now, Subterra Guru is like the main combo starter for everything you want to do in this deck. All the main Subterra monsters have flip effects. In the case of Guru, it lets you search any Subterra card, which is absolutely crazy. Everyone wants to play this card as many as possible in Subterras if you're picking up this deck, and for a good reason. It also has a cool quick play effect that lets you Book of Moon this card and like an opponent's monster. That's a pretty decent effect that comes up every once in a while, but overall you're playing this card because you can search it with Hidden City, set it face down, and then use Hidden City to flip it face up, and then search Subterra Fiendus or whatever Subterra Behemoth that you need at that moment. That's definitely a staple 3 of, in other words. And then also we have 3 copies of Subterra Fiendus. So this card was one of the last pieces of Subterra support that we got, and it's also one of the best Subterra cards out there right now. The best way to describe Subterra Fiendus is that it's an Ash Blossom that requires you to flip a Subterra monster face down, except it doesn't have to just negate searching effects. It can just negate anything. This card is incredible, and more importantly, it also has a sweet revival effect, which is really cool as well. So this card is just, it just has everything. It recycles your cards, it negates your opponent's cards. It's one of the best cards in the Subterra deck and works really well in tandem with the Guru. Also, in this version, we have 3 copies of Subterra Nemesis Warrior. This card isn't really played in the Guru version, which is perfectly fine because that version doesn't really play any Behemoths, but because we're playing Behemoth monsters and because this thing is just like infinite resources and infinite value, I really want to play 3 copies in this deck. It works with a lot of your other cards. It continuously brings itself back out, which you can use for like Link summoning or Synchro summoning or just attacking. It's an overall really solid card and one of the original Subterra monsters. And then we have 1 Subterra Nemesis Archer. So here's the thing about this card. It's not the best, but it is like a giant wrap for Subterras, which is kind of cool because you can summon Subterra Guru with this card, which I think is a pretty neat effect. It's not like the greatest effect in the world, but you can just bring out any Subterra monster. It doesn't have to be Guru, but usually you're just bringing out Guru. Summons it in face on defense mode or face up defense mode, which is pretty cool. And then a lot of times when you summon the Guru with this card, you then just immediately flip it face up with like Hidden City or Subterra Final Battle. Next up, for the Behemoth monsters, we have 3 copies of Umastrix. This is like the big Behemoth monster that you want to focus on the most. This is a card that you want to trigger on your turn and your opponent's turn, unlike a lot of these where you just want to trigger them on one or the other. This card, when it's flip face up, gets to banish an opponent's monster. That is incredible. Even in 2019, banishing opponent's monsters is still pretty good. It's like a Farfa that's permanent. It's just a really fantastic card. Also, all of the Behemoth monsters have the exact same summoning effect that says when a face-up monster you control is flipped face down, if you control no face-up monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. That's pretty cool, and then also you can flip it face down once per turn. So the idea behind the Behemoths a lot of the time is that their own effect is flipping them face down, and then you're using cards like Hidden City or Final Battle to flip them up either on your turn or your opponent's turn. That's kind of how you're triggering those effects over and over again. Also, we're playing 2 copies of Stalagmo. This is like another one of the original Subterras. This deck does play all 4 of the original Subterra cards, and yeah, this card's really cool. It's basically just a Destiny draw, which is kind of neat, and then also it gets to an insane amount of attack points and defense points. When you use Final Battle on it, it goes up to 4,900, which is a ton of damage. So Final Battle, which we'll get to in a second, second. It's a trap card. One of the effects on it is that it makes the attack and defense of a Subterra monster the combined attack and defense of that card. So in the case of this card, it goes up to 4,900, which is pretty crazy. 2 copies of this guy that I definitely can't pronounce. It's just the Glacier one. This is a Foolish Burial when it's flip face up, so you can send stuff to set up for your Phoenix. You can send the Nemesis Warrior if you want. You can also send Glow Up Bulb to the graveyard and set up your Synchro plays too. And then 1 copy of another one that I can't pronounce, the Voltic one. So this guy's cool. It's like a Change of Heart on face down monsters only, but it's cool because you can combo it with Guru. Guru can flip something face down on your opponent's turn, and then you can use this card with your final battle or whatever to then take control of that card because it starts on a new chain. It's a really good card. And then the last monster, and the only non-Subterra monster in the entire deck, is Glow Up Bulb. I know it's not like a Subterra monster. We want to stay as pure as possible, but this card, it just combos so well with the Glacier. It's so good sending Glow Up Bulb. You can make Naturia Beast, you can make Trishula, really solid tuner monster. You can also use it for many of your Link monsters that you might want to summon, so you don't always have to Synchro summon with that card. That's it for the monsters though. Like I said, no hand traps, just keep it as dirt cheap as possible. Although understandably this deck got a little more expensive because I hear that Hidden City is like up in price now, which hopefully you guys had your copies already if you're looking to play this deck. But 3 copies of Hidden City. Unfortunately, for those of you that do not have this card yet, yes, it is absolutely a staple 3 of, and this card just way too important. It searches out literally whatever you want it to. It searches out any Subterra monster when you activate it, and maybe that, I mean, that's a really good effect, don't get me wrong, but the main reason that you need this card so badly is because it helps you switch your battle positions during your turn and also during your opponent's turn, and that is just super helpful for the Subterra strategy. Most of your combos are going to start with Hidden City. It's just way too good. If you use Hidden City and search a Guru and then set Guru and then search a card, that's a free +2 in card economy, so definitely look out for that. And then we want to search it. We want to open that card every single game. So we want to have 2 copies of Terraforming. So that total, we basically have 5 copies of Hidden City. And then moving on, you don't want to get hand trapped, and we're not playing hand traps, but we want to play Call by the Grave to make sure our searches go through. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring on the Hidden City is a huge detriment to your strategy. The main reason being is that Hidden City is a hard once per turn effect, so if that happens, you can't get that search back. So you really need Call by the Grave for when your opponent Ash Blossoms you. Usually when you're set up, the hand traps don't matter too much because you can just use Phoenix to negate them, but if you're not set up yet, you want to have Call by the Grave to make sure that you can get set up in the first place. And then we have 1 copy of Subterra Cave Clash. This card's kind of funny. It might not look like the greatest card in the deck. It does do a minor attack and defense boost, but the main point of Subterra Cave Clash is its second effect that says when a Subterra monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target 1 Subterra card in your graveyard, except Subterra Cave Clash, add it to your hand. Keep in mind you can search this out with Guru, and the reason that you're doing that is because this lets you recycle Subterra Fiendus just infinitely, basically, and it's pretty easy to trigger this on your opponent's turn too, because you have Subterra Final Battle, which makes your guys have huge attack and defense points. So a lot of times what happens, especially if your opponent doesn't know what these cards do, is they just like attack your face down monsters thinking that they can kill them, and then you flip Final Battle on the damage step and they take a ton of damage. You get a card back with Cave Clash. So I like that card a lot, just as a 1-of that you can search whenever you need it. And then sort of like the Saki 1-ofs, we have 1 Scapegoat and 1 1-for-1. Scapegoat might seem kind of weird as like a 1-of in a deck because like, oh, you want to open with Scapegoat, but it's limited now, so we have to play 1, and this deck doesn't really use its extra deck too much. This version uses the extra deck more than the Guru Control version because you have a lot more monsters to play with, and Nemesis Warrior works really well with Link monsters. But in general, Scapegoat's still just so good. It doesn't really matter that it's taking up like a third of your extra deck, and a lot of times you're just summoning Missus Radiant, 2 Missus Radiants off a Scapegoat just to push in a lot of damage. And then we have 1 1-for-1. This card summons Glow Up Bulb or Fiendus. Both are solid choices in a variety of situations. And then for the trap cards, we have 3 copies of Subterra Final Battle, the card that I've been talking about a few times. This card has 4 different effects. The first 2 effects let you either flip a Subterra monster face up or face down, depending on what you want to do. A lot of times you're using this to flip the Subterras face up and then trigger their effects on your opponent's turn. And then also the third effect, the third option, I suppose, you don't use all 4 of them, is it makes the attack and defense of a Subterra monster equal to the combined attack and defense of that Subterra monster, which is really insane. That's how you push for damage. And I mean, all the Subterras, they go up to like 3,000 or 4,000 attack and defense, which is pretty crazy. And then the last effect, which is the one that you use the least often, it says this turn activated effects of Subterra cards cannot be negated. It's like okay, it's just not like the greatest. Usually you're just using this card as a way to flip your guys face up during your opponent's turn, like Umastrix, so you can like banish a monster, or to double the attack. Well, I guess it's not technically doubling the attack and defense of a card, but you know what I mean, combining the attack and defense of the card just to make it have like 4,000 attack and defense. So this card's really good. good. The cool thing about this card too, if you didn't notice, is that it resets itself just like Scrap Iron Scarecrow. So every time you activate this, you just get to use it again and again. And the effects aren't hard ones per turn, which means if you have multiple copies, if you have all 3 copies, you can use all 3 copies every single turn, for the rest of the game. It's so stupid. So that card's insane. Next up, I wasn't really sure about like playing Floodgates in this deck because it's more of like a casual locals deck. But man, if your deck can play Gozen Match right now, I feel like you have to be playing Gozen Match. It is just so strong against every single meta deck and a lot of the rogue decks as well. If you notice, every single Subterra monster in this entire deck, as well as most of the important extra deck monsters, are Earth monsters. So Gozen Match is just a perfect fit. This is the way that you will actually have a chance against a lot of the meta decks. Just a fantastic card right now. If you can afford to play this card, you definitely should be playing it. And yeah, this deck can afford to play it. And then lastly, we have 5 Solemn. So these are just the sort of your board control cards, and these cards you can pick up for pretty cheap. Obviously not these versions of the cards, but you can just play the super rare version of Solemn Strike. It does the same thing. And yeah, these cards are fantastic. This deck really wants to just like board control for a turn or two and then just OTK your opponent with Final Battle. And this is a great way to do that. You can just like stop your opponent's like one play or whatever, and then you just like kill them with 4,000 attack monsters. Pretty good. So these cards are fantastic, and they also prevent you, well, in the case of Judgment, you can prevent yourself from losing to Evenly Match, because that card kind of hard counters this deck if they're able to bait the Fiendus activation. Anyway, that's the main deck though. That's 40 cards. So the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Mrs. Radiant, by far the most important card here, and then we have 2 copies of Link Spider, 1 Link Kribo, and then 1 this card that I can't pronounce, but it's like okay sometimes. If you like go through the Mrs. Radiance, I guess you can summon this. And more importantly, this card's in here mainly for when you steal cards that are set with the Voltic guy, and then you don't have an Earth monster, so you can't make the Mrs. Radiance. So it's pretty good for that. We play the 3 main nightmares here. So we got Phoenix, Cerberus, and Unicorn. These cards are all just standard. You can make Cerberus when you have Gozen Match as well. We play the 2 Boral. These are probably like the most expensive cards in the deck, Boral Sword and Boral Low Dragon. If you can't afford these cards, they're not necessary for this deck. I mean, they're good, but like to be completely honest, you pretty much never make these cards unless you have Scapegoat and you can go for game. And even then, when you have Scapegoat, a lot of time Mrs. Radiance is better. It's just that Borload gets around cards that can't be destroyed. Boral Sword can do like a lot of damage on a single target, which is pretty cool. So if you can't afford these cards, totally fine. You don't need to, but they are helpful if you have access to them. And then I play 1 Nightmare Griffin. It's not like the greatest card in this deck. You might not think it would be, at least, but it's cool. You can like set Solemns if you want to. You can set whatever you need to. You can like reset some of your like Saki one-ofs. I mean, Scapegoat might not seem like the craziest thing to reset, but like if you didn't use all of your like extra deck resources with the first Scapegoat, which is very possible, you can just use it again. Because like a lot of times you're just using 1 Mrs. Radiant, 1 Link Spider, and then 1 Link Kribo. So if you set the Scapegoat again, you can like Scapegoat on your opponent's turn, then summon the other Mrs. Radiant, the other Link Spider, and then re-summon the Link Kribo from your graveyard. So this card's pretty cool for that. Just overall a good card, and yeah, you can like Floodgate your opponent, I guess, which is kind of cool. But a lot of times, like these Link 4 monsters, you're just not making very often because they're just so hard to make in this deck without drawing Scapegoat specifically. And then we play some synchros, so 1 Cherry Beast, which you can make with Glow Up Bulb, and then either Nemesis Warrior or Guru. It's pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's good against the decks that play Spell, things like Sky Strikers, and it's good against like Rogue too, not like the best against Altergeist, but in general, this card's is good if you can make it the first turn. If you open 1 for 1, you usually are going to summon this card unless you really need that Fiendus, but most of the time you're summoning a Cherry Beast. Then 1 Trishula, you can make this card with like 2 or like 1 Guru, 1 Glow Up Bulb, 1 Nemesis Warrior. You can make it with like Umastrix, Fiendish, and Glow Up Bulb. There's like a couple different situations where you can make this card, so it's pretty good for like removing cards from play. Obviously, that's what it does. And then 1 copy of Gaga Cowboy. It's just like a way to close out games when you can't quite kill your opponent. Also worth noting that Gaga Cowboy is an Earth monster, so you can summon it under Gozen Match. Anyway, though, that is going to pretty much wrap it up for my deck profile on pure Subterrors. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you are interested in watching a more Guru control-based deck, it is a little bit more, well, a lot more expensive, but it is a more competitive version of Subterrors, just not playing all of the cool Behemoth monsters, but it's cool that its Subterrors in some way, shape, or form are a little bit competitive. If you want to see that, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I will have that later on this week. Thank you so much to Sam for letting me come on his channel and talk about Subterrors. I love this deck so much, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.
I feel like Usain in the cheetah print. Talk fresh game, I don't need a minute. R.I.P. the game, I need a minute. Okay, let's proceed with it. I'm in the house, got the deed with it. These bozos always sneak this and they taking shots. I'm a keen with it. Like, no, this league business.